Well, things are really starting to heat up in the Middle East. Iran says that they are going to retaliate against Israel due to Israel killing two Hamas leaders, senior officials. And we're seeing war with Hezbollah in northern Israel, another Iranian proxy. And just recently, a United States base got attacked by a missile. And of course, that missile was from Iran as well. And so Iran is starting to make their move. Israel is just waiting. Iran says that they are going to flood Israel with all sorts of rockets and drones. They say it might come in waves, it might come all at once, but Israel is waiting, and so is the United States. Now, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, declared that if Iran attacks Israel, the United States will declare war against Iran. And of course, we have been saying this for years because the biblical prophecies show that the United States is going to destroy Iran. Now, we see this in Isaiah, the 14th chapter. Amazing how accurate prophecies are. Isaiah, the 14th chapter, verse 29, talking about Palestine. God says this, "Rejoice not thou whole Palestine, because the rod of him," that is Judah, the Jews, "the rod of him that smote thee is broken." So here we see Judah smoting Palestine, which we've seen this, of course, recently. Of course, the October 7th, when they took all the hostages and invaded Israel. Israel turned around and, of course, devastated and destroyed the Gaza Strip. So here we see Judah smoting Palestine. It says, but God says, "Rejoice not thou whole Palestine, because the rod of him that smote thee is broken." Judah is going to be broken. We've shown you in the biblical prophecies that the iron dome is that they have set up is going to be penetrated. It's going to dissolve, and Judah is going to be broken. It says, "The rod of him that smote thee is broken, for out of the serpent's root." So here we see a root from Judah. "Out of the serpent's root shall come forth a viper," a stronger enemy against Palestine, and his fruit shall be a fiery flying serpent. And so we've shown you another broadcast that this means the king of the north that's going to come out of the north, as it plainly says here in verse 31, "Howl, O gate, cry, O city, thou whole Palestine, are dissolved." And of course, it is dissolved. In the Gaza Strip, there's hardly any missiles coming out of there now. I mean, Judah just devastated the Gaza Strip. Hamas has no more power. Maybe we see a couple of missiles here and there, but pretty much the Hamas government has no power. They are dissolved. So it says, "Whole Palestine are dissolved, for there shall come from the north a smoke." And a smoke, of course, is a symbol of a huge army, and it's coming from the north. And this northern army, it says in verse 30, "I will kill your root." And of course, we have shown you another broadcast that the root of Palestine, the root of Hamas, is Iran. And God says, "I'm going to kill your root with this king of the north." And we have identified the king of the north as the president of the United States of America. And we've shown you that in many, many videos. And it comes out of Judah is coming out of this root, out of the serpent's root. And Judah has its root in the United States and the British, when you look into history. So obviously, the king of the north is the president of the United States. And God says, "I will kill your root." And it says that out of the north shall come forth the smoke. And so this king of the north, the president of the United States, is going to slay and destroy the root of Palestine, the root of Hezbollah, and other proxies around the Middle East. It's going to destroy Iran. That's what the biblical prophecies say. Now, notice Jeremiah, the 51st chapter, verse 19 through 20. How does God destroy nations? Well, he destroys it with his people Israel. As he plainly says here, the portion of Jacob is not like them, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance. The Lord of hosts is his name. And he says, thou art my battle axe and weapons of war, for with thee will I break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms. So God uses his people Israel to bring about his wrath on many nations. And he's saying the same thing in Isaiah the 14th chapter. He was going to kill the root of Palestine, that's Iran, and it says he shall slay thy remnant. Who is that he? The king of the north. It says, out of the north a smoke shall come, a huge army, and that is the king of the north, the president of the United States. Notice in Zechariah the 9th chapter, here we see another end time prophecy, and it says the burden of the word of the eternal in the land of Hadrach and Damascus shall be the rest thereof. Now other translations say that Damascus and Hadrach are confederates. They're in an alliance. And Clark's commentary, the Pulpit commentary, Adams Clark commentary shows that the land of Hadrach is Persia. And they're in alliance with Syria, with Damascus. And we see that today. Iran has its troops in Syria, and they're in alliance with the Syrian government. And God says that that in the land of Hadrach and Damascus shall be the rest thereof. This rest means God's anger will rest on those whom he punishes. And of course, you can read that in Clark's commentary, the Pulpit commentary, and Adams Clark's commentary. So God's anger, God's wrath rests on Damascus. It rests on Iran. And God says, I'm going to kill your root, and he's going to use his people Israel to do it. The king of the north, NATO. Now, just recently, if you look at this map that I have on the screen here, if you look at this map, and you'll see the USS Roosevelt, they have some warships all around the Middle East. They're all set up awaiting Iran to see what Iran is going to do. And as Mike Johnson says, that if Iran attacks Israel, the United States is going to declare war against Iran. And look, they have ships in the Mediterranean Sea. Now I want to show you this prophecy. In Jeremiah the 49th chapter, verses 23 through 27. Notice what God says here. Concerning Damascus, and of course Damascus is in an alliance with Iran. Concerning Damascus, and this you can compare it with Zechariah the 9th chapter, it's the same prophecy. And it says here, for they have heard evil things. These are the people of Damascus. It says they have heard evil things. They are faint-hearted. There is sorrow on the sea. Now, that word sorrow, in other translations, it says trouble on the sea. Or the people in the sea are concerned of what's going on, and they cannot be quiet. So here we see, at the sea, people at the sea, and they are troubled. They are concerned about what's happening in the Middle East, and they cannot be quiet. They can't rest any longer. Who are these people? Well, obviously, it is the king of the north, because it says the king of the north is troubled in Daniel, the 11th chapter, verse 44 and 45. And they are set in the sea. And as I showed you in the map there, the United States, the king of the north, is set up in the Mediterranean Sea, but they're also set up in the Red Sea, in the Persian Gulf, waiting what Iran is going to do. And of course, they are troubled. And notice this prophecy, talking about Damascus, and you can line it up with Zechariah, the 9th chapter, and Damascus is in alliance with Iran. It says, they are troubled, they are faint-hearted, there is sorrow on the sea, and it cannot be quiet. Then it says, Damascus is waxed feeble, and turneth herself to flee, and fear hath seized on her, anguish and sorrows have taken her as a woman in travail. That's exactly the condition of Syria today. They are feeble, they are weak. And then it says here, God laments that this city used to be a city of his praise, a city of his joy, and it's not any longer. It has turned Islamic. It used to be Christian, now it's Islamic, and now it's at the brink of total destruction. It says, her young men shall fall in her streets. All the men of war shall be cut off in that day. So that means that it's in the last days. In that day always indicates an end time prophecy. Saith the Eternal of hosts. And then God says, I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus. It shall consume the places of Ben-Hadad. And that hasn't happened yet. But it will happen when the king of the north, NATO, declares war on Iran, attacks Iran, and destroys it. And God says, I will kill your root. He will slay your remnant. Those are all the proxies. They're all around the Middle East, and they are in Syria. And God says that I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, or as it says here in another translation, in the Moffat translation, it says here, fling fires of war upon Damascus walls, and burnt up all Ben-Hadad's palaces. And of course, what flings through the air and burns down buildings? Missiles. And of course, the United States has plenty of those. So it's all lined up. They're all there in the Middle East. They're awaiting Iran's next move. And Iran says it's going to retaliate, and it's going to unleash hundreds of thousands of missiles against Israel. And it's going to get to the point where the United States is going to step in, occupy Israel, and destroy Iran, as the biblical prophecies say. And when we see the United States occupy Israel, it says that he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. The end of NATO, the end of the EU. Get all these booklets. We'll put the links in the description below. All these booklets that talk about everything that's happening in the Middle East today.